As you can see, that's Vogelsang. The school facility is right over there. Now we're going to hike about 1 kilometer to the village of Wollseifen, which is an old German village which was heavily bombed during World War II. And after the British took over, they told the people to evacuate because they're gonna make it part of their facility.
Chapel of the Way. Located at the former entrance to Wollseifen, it was built in 1908. During the military period of Vogelsang from 1946 to 2005, almost all the buildings in the village fell victim to military exercises. The chapel survived but was badly damaged. Former villagers funded the restorations, such as materials and required craftsmen. The figure of Mary is also a donation from a private house, as recollected from a local boy, Fritz Sistig, who was a child from that time. The chapel used to be honored once a year, during the Corpus Christi. It was finally cleaned with beautiful flower arrangements. The pastor gives the blessing here after a procession all over the village. For us children, the procession was an ordeal, since it lasted over 2 hours. Now the history. While the surrounding Orftal was already established during the Roman period, the village of Wollseifen, which means something like a brook valley, was first mentioned in 1069 under the sovereignty of the Archbishop of Cologne. The first settlers lived in simple huts made of tree trunks with fireplaces. This used to be the schoolhouse, which used to have 2 floors. Now it's an exhibit dedicated to the village. Another recollection from Fritz Sistig. The old school building was constructed at the end of the 18th century, and when the school moved to its new building in 1920, my father bought the old building, rebuilt it, and successfully operated a grocery store until the expulsion in 1946. Another true story about the school. Clemens Kaufmann from Cologne was a painter who was drafted. At the end of 1944, he came to Wollseifen on home leave. He never reported back. The military police searched for the soldier but he was never found. It turns out he built a secret room in the school's attic with his wife and was awaiting for the Americans to advance in early 1945. After being driven out in 1946, he lived with his wife in Germud, Malsbaden for many years. Because of the harsh climate and the poor soil, it is only enough for a poor living. Nevertheless, Wolfsigners had their own chapel dedicated to Saint Rose. The construction began in the 15th century and was elevated to a parish church in 1635. Until the 19th century, the population lived from modest agriculture, sheep farming, logging, and coal making. From 1899 to 1904, the construction of the Urf Dam created jobs, but many farmers lost their best land. Also, electrical energy came into the village. The dam attracted weekend tourists. New sources of income were opened up. Tourism was the first economic boom before World War I. Sadly, the beginning of the end of Wollseifen began in 1934. Only a few kilometers away from the village, the National Socialists began building the Ordensburg Vogelsang. Residents hoped for additional jobs from its construction. In the battle for the Eifel in the late phase of the Second World War, the village was damaged caused by Allied artillery fire. The evacuated population returned to Wollseifen under British administration in the summer of 1945. On August 13, 1946, the British military asked approximately 120 families to vacate the village within 3 weeks because they wanted to use the site for military training area. It caused dismay among the population, who had thought that after returning from the war in exile, they would have to rebuild their homes and plow their fields once more. On September 1, 1946, Wollseifen was declared a restricted area. Villagers were sent to emergency shelters in the surrounding villages or stayed with relatives and friends nearby. They left the keys in their front doors, hoping to return, and they eventually came back more often against the blocking. However, the British used the houses as target practice. As a result, the abandoned farms were gradually destroyed, with the exception of the undamaged transformer house, ruins of the church, the former school building, and a chapel on the outskirts of the village. On this site, to commemorate the soldiers who died during World War I, the Wolfsiefeners erected a memorial that served as a blessing station on Corpus Christi. It was inaugurated on a wonderful summer morning. The people remember the church choir singing a 4-part high mass, and the pastor's commemorative speech, and the celebration that made a deep impression on all its participants. Crystal Cooper remembers, as a young girl in the front of the cenotaph, her sister took the photo on Corpus Christi 1943. With the outbreak of the Second World War, Corpus Christi processions no longer took place around the village. Only the church was ceremoniously circled once. 3 years later, in 1950, the villagers received a partial refugee status as defined by the Refugee Settlement Act of August 10, 1949. The same year, the British handed over the military training area to the Belgian Armed Forces. Once a year, at All Souls Day, the villagers were allowed to visit the graves of their relatives with the approval of the Belgian military administration. In 1954, Wollseifen was bombed twice a week from the Belgian military training area of Elsenborg. The church and the cemetery were so badly damaged that in 1955, the graves were relocated close to the new residential areas of the former residents. The same year, it became clear that the military will not be able to set up a permanent facility and that the people from Wollseifen will not be able to return to their village. The Federal Property Administration began to buy up their properties. The price was disputed. Many owners felt disadvantaged. In 1962, the now scattered villagers founded the Traditional Association Wolfsigen, which represented their interest in reparation payments to the federal government. After 1975, these demands had been rejected, so the association moved its activities on history, dialect poetry, and tradition care. The number of members of the association has decreased due to the passage of time as the descendants live somewhere else. So that's it for the history of Wollseifen. Until next time, don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe. Bye! So guys, if you like our videos, please subscribe to our channel and feel free to comment.
Hit the bell, hit the bell, hit the bell, hit the bell. Come on guys, hit the bell.
For notifications.